We could do anything. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Welcome to A-Train Bets. I'm the A-Train, and I make bets. And today we're going to talk about something that I think is generally misunderstood a little bit in the positive EV gambling circles, and maybe even just more broadly than that. And that is, what does it mean to hedge a bet? And what does it mean to do arbitrage? Because those are specifically intertwined. And so what I want to do, I'm going to bring up, and this isn't going to be an odds jam specific video, though I'm going to use odds jam just to help articulate what's going on here. But I think it's a really interesting thing. And for those of you who are trying to get your head around how to go about betting sports in a productive, positive, profitable way, it's really important to understand what hedging is, because sometimes you're going to want to do it, sometimes you're not. And we're going to talk a little bit about why you would or wouldn't want to do this in the future. But I think the best way to do it is to start with arbitrage, because I think it's relatively easy to get your head around. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce over to, this is just the odds jam arbitrage screen. So you can see this is just the arbitrage screen in odds jam. It's a screen where it helps you find where there's both sides of a bet, that if you place them both, you'll be guaranteed a victory. You'll be guaranteed profit. That's good. We like profit, right? Well, I want you to understand arbitrage has some strengths, and that is a guaranteed return. And in this case, we're going to look at this one in an example. I've chosen this one for a particular reason, but we'll get to that. But the percentage that you see here coming from the screen, it's the percent of profit you're going to get on executing this play. Now, the thing with arbitrages is that you're going to need to place a lot of them to make a lot of money, because the guaranteed return is relatively low. So in this, you're going to get 0.12%, because you're going to go out and you're going to place a bet for minus 184 at Pinnacle and plus 185 at Fliff, and that plus one differential is guaranteed money, so you're going to lose on one side, you're going to win on the other side, but you're going to guarantee that you have you will not lose money as long as you place the bets in the right amount. So what does it mean? What's actually happening here? Because we do a lot of this positive EV betting with odds jam to have a expected value where one of these prices is so far from what the market truth is that we can expect to make profits over time. Now, on any given bet, we're going to win or lose that individual bet. We're not even trying to predict which side we think is going to win. We're going to let the market determine that for us. We have videos that talk about that. But what we want to do is understand what is inside of an arbitrage that makes it valuable. Well, if you think about this, we're going to bring up the calculator that I use, the money machine. So don't worry about that. We're going to do that. But think about what's happening here. You have a bunch of different bets being offered in the market. You see Pinnacle, who is largely regarded as the sharpest sports book in the world. They are having a play here that says minus 184 and plus 157. So that is one piece of data that we're working with. We see this outlier line at Fliff, just comparing across. We're not even doing any math yet. We're just looking at stuff, right? We're saying this plus 185, wow, that's way bigger than all of the other places in the market. Now, you can see most of them are all consolidated in this plus 155 or plus 157. But Pinnacle, just being a sharper book, having a lower width and so lower VIG, that is why they have this minus 184, whereas a lot of these other ones are rocking minus 210 or whatever. And then Fliff is just way skewed on this plus side to the under, which means you're going to get, for $10, you're going to get $18.50 back if you bet at Fliff and that bet wins, versus if you did that at Bovada, you would only get $15.50 back. So it makes a difference, right? And so that's how we end up evaluating these bets. Now, we can quantify this. So I'm going to bring up the money machine. And all this is a spreadsheet version of the calculators that OddsJam offers. So there's nothing magical about what's going on here. We're just bringing some of the data and numbers to the forefront where it's easy for us to assess. So if I do this, I can say, all right, well, let's bring in the numbers that we actually have here. So we first, in the book, we put in what numbers can we actually bet at. And then on the reference, we're just going to say, what is our view of the market? We can say, okay, in this case, we have minus 184 and plus 157, which is what Pinnacle's offering. And they're clearly the lowest VIG in the market. And so we believe, yeah, they're probably a pretty good reflection of what the market actually is. So if we do that, we see, all right, well, if I was going to play this with my bankroll of 27,000, then the Kelly criteria is recommending that I play 253, but ignore the wager amount. You don't even care about the wager amounts. The amounts are going to be different depending on your bankroll. But the important thing here is to understand that on an arbitrage play, what you're typically going to see, you have two halves, right? When you add them together, one side outweighs the other side enough that it's going to be a positive bet overall, a guaranteed profit of 0.12. Now, here's the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to have a locked-in guaranteed profit of 0.12, or would you rather have a profit of 6.94% by taking on more risk? Because what happens here is that effectively what we're doing on an arbitrage is we have a positive EV play that is being offset by a negative EV play, and then combined, it results in a positive EV play. Now, in this case, it's a great example, right? You have your minus 184 that you're going to place at Pinnacle, which is a negative EV play. It's still better than placing it at minus 255 or at minus 210, but it's still a negative EV play over at Pinnacle. They're still a sportsbook. They're still making money on these bets. And so what you're saying is, the outlier line here, the play that you really want, the reason this arbitrage even exists is because of this one bet at Fliff of plus 185. That is exactly why this is the bet that if I'm going to play it, I'm going to play just the positive EV side, because that's where I'm going to get a 6% plus expected return versus a guaranteed return of 0.12. Now, this isn't the first time you're going to hear of something like this, because if you've ever done investing in the financial markets, where do you get a guaranteed return? Well, a lot of folks say that the United States Treasuries are a guaranteed return. Do they have a lower or higher expected value than a stock? The betting a S&P 500 index mutual fund or something like that. It's going to be lower because you are effectively guaranteeing a return. It's going to be a much lower percentage because you're not taking on as much risk. Similarly, in sports betting, numbers work the same, guys. It's exactly the same concept, is that if you remove the risk, you're effectively ensuring a guaranteed profit, but at the expense of paying for it. So what we do with positive EV betting is we're looking for the best plays. And in an arbitrage, there is one best play most of the time. And occasionally you'll find both that have very slight EVs. That just means that there was two outliers in that market at that moment that led to an arbitrage. That's the exception to the rule. That happens. But it probably only happens at most maybe 5% of the time. Most of the time you're going to see stuff like this, where you have one side that's heavy positive EV and one side that's negative EV, just a little bit less negative EV than the positive side is positive, right? So that's where we want to be understanding. Is like, if you're going to go out and bet dozens of bets a day like I do, you're probably not going to want to hedge that. You don't need to lock in the guaranteed profit. You want to take, hey, I'm going to probably win some, I'm going to lose some, I'm going to have winning days and losing days, but overall, my expected value is 6+% on this bet over time versus a guarantee that I'm going to make 0.12 today. Not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the bigger play, and I'm willing to assume some of the risk to do that. So if you want, now, when would you want to hedge this kind of bet? Well, how about if you have a free play that says, all right, you can bet $1,000 free, and if you win, you keep the money. If you lose the money. If you're betting $1,000 on some sort of promotion or something like that, that may be more than you want to risk. Totally. You might want to lock in a guaranteed $500 on a $1,000 free bet, because that's way more than you would normally bet. That's the kind of situation that you can get into where you're like, you know what, let me take some of this. Or in a case where you've done a parlay and you have multiple things going on. Maybe you've done a 8-game parlay or something that's really high, and you've done it with positive EV expectation or whatever. But now you're getting to the end where it's like, okay, there's life-changing money. All of a sudden you could win $100,000, or you might lose it all. Or you may not win anything, is a better way to say, if that doesn't come through. Well, you may want to hedge and place the other side, the opposite side of the thing that you're really rooting for, to be able to lock in some of that profit. So think about this, not in terms of individual bets a lot of the time, but in terms of money management, risk management. That's what you want to be thinking about as a sharp sports bettor. You want to be thinking about, what is my portfolio of risk, and how do I want to manage that risk in accordance with what my objectives are. So if your objectives are to make the most profit possible, it's going to take you a whole lot of arbitraging to make the same 6.94% that I would stand to make by making this bet with just one side. Now, granted, on any given bet, you're going to win 100% or lose 100%. Like, that's the thing, right? You're going to win whatever percentage it is, but you're winning or losing an individual bet. But the law of large numbers, the collection of all of these bets over time will lead to an expected return over time on average of 6.94%. This one bet will never win exactly 6.94%. That's impossible because you're either going to win or lose this bet at plus 185. But that's where over time, that's what the expectation is. That's why those calculations are so important to understand. And I've seen a lot of people who would have had the appetite for risk try to go and do arbitrage. And like, this is terrible. I don't make enough money for all the work of putting in these bets and finding the alternate lines and all that stuff. And they get limited and blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of work. And for some people, it's totally worth it. They're like, yeah, I like the guaranteed return. This is awesome. This is a good side hustle. Okay. You could bet $1 million and make a nice little living on 0.12% bets. You're going to sometimes find, like, if we go into this, positive EV screen, you can make a 1% return, 200 versus 190. That's great. You got to go through the work of setting up the books and got to go through it, make sure you get both lines. There's some risk too, because you got to place them one at a time. So you place one side of the bet and then the other side of the bet moves or gets limited or gets pulled off or whatever. And so like there is some risk that you don't always offset perfectly. In those cases, I would always say place the plus EV side of the arbitrage first, because the worst case scenario is, you're not hedging it as effectively, but at least you have the plus EV side locked in. So I generally try to do that. If I'm going to do an arbitrage strategy for whatever reason, that's what I'm going to be looking at. So hopefully with that, this at least gives you some insight into what hedging's about, how you might use arbitrage, how managing risk is important. And think in mind too, like keep in mind, sportsbooks are managing a portfolio of risk as well. They're setting the prices, but you're the one who's deciding whether or not to bet. When we're sharp sports bettors, what is the decision framework? What are we thinking about? It's as simple as saying, do I want to bet or not? And if I do want to bet, how much? Those are really the only decisions we have to make. And so good rule of thumb is like, if you don't know, don't bet. If you aren't sure about something, don't bet it. There's another opportunity around the corner. So anyway, when a hedging strategy can be very useful to you, but what I worry about is that people will sometimes do an arbitrage because they're like, guaranteed profit, awesome. But then they realize, oh man, I could have made so much more money if I just made more plus EV bets versus arbitrage, which locked in a guaranteed profit. Some people want to invest in stocks, other people want to invest in treasuries. So not saying one is better than the other, but understand your risk profile, understand your objectives in sports betting, and ignore any of these stupid sports books that are like, nobody should expect to win money sports betting. Yeah, you should if you're doing it right. Like you really should expect to win money over time, not on any given bet, but over time you should be expecting to win money sports betting with positive EV strategies. If you find this content useful, please like and subscribe. Follow me on A-Trade Bets will get you to a bunch of different good places, but I do live streams Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Central and 4 p.m. for Power Hour. And I show you how I do these bets, how I make the bets. I show you making the bets, and we track the results. I have nothing to hide. I want to teach you how to do this too. This doesn't need to be mysterious. This is not magic. This is math. And with that, thank you for joining me today, and I wish you best of luck on all of your bets, arbitrage, positive EV, or otherwise. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.